The program we have put together today begins with the student veterans, expands to campus involvement, and then goes on to the formation of community with regard to our veterans. The moderator of our first panel is Darren Dunlap, Assistant Admissions Director and Advisor to our Student Veterans Association. So without further ado, let me call Darren and his crew up here to do our first panel.
Can you hear me in the back okay? Okay, it's my first time here. My name is Darren Dunlap, and I'm the Assistant Admissions Director for Veteran Recruiting at Maryville College. This was my day yesterday. It's a typical day. I was reviewing applications for the fall, and I'm looking at a small group of incoming veterans with our veteran application pool. Just kind of seeing where they're at. Looking ahead at advising and registration, and I'm always anticipating questions too, because my veterans come in prepared. They want answers, and I'm a veteran, and so I know what they're thinking, so I want to be ready for them. And I've got, and I just kind of step back. I just sort of step back a little bit, and I look at this group. I've got an aviation structural mechanic, now on active duty in the Navy, coming to us soon. I've got a U.S. Army combat medic coming to us here in a couple of weeks. And I've got a former Marine who has had an exemplary career as a civilian law enforcement officer. Very different group. Age range, early 20s to late 30s. And their choice of majors doesn't parallel or reflect what they did in the military. They're all taking these different career paths. They're all stepping into something new. And so, you know, a typical day, but these are not typical students. They're mature, they're focused, they're hardworking, and they're really diverse. So I was thinking about that when I was thinking about this panel, because in understanding the student veteran population, you have to sort of step back first a little bit and look at just the question of who are our student veterans. And as we've seen just from Greg's presentation, that's not so easy. We're all a little bit different. And I'm a veteran from, actually I got out, my term of service ended just before the Gulf War. So even though I've been in the service, I'm seeing all these new veterans come in, and I'm learning from them. So this is an education for me, too. Clicker here. Oh, where is it now? Myself there, sorry. So first we'll take a quick look at student demographics. I'm going to introduce my panel. I'm going to let them do the introductions, but real quick, Linda, Adam, and Wendy. Okay? But who qualifies as a student veteran? Okay. Anyone who has completed military service and enrolls in college, Reserve and National Guard. We have plenty of students from the Guard. Retired military and active military. We see it all here at our small college. And we also have, though, I'm seeing a huge growth in our VA dependent community. We have a lot of spouses come in, and we have a lot of children of service members who are using the post 9/11 GI Bill. So it grows more complicated every year. The Million Records Project, that wonderful private-public partnership between Student Veterans of America, VA, National Student Clearinghouse gave us first phase of this report, and even though they were looking overall at graduation rates, you get this great snapshot about student veterans. And it's really been a fascinating report for me. I keep going back at it, looking at it, and I'm looking forward to phase 2. This was just phase 1, but they sort of give us a good thumbnail of who our student veterans are. Like other non-traditional students, they tend to be older, they have families, they're juggling work and they're juggling school. Their time in school can be interrupted by military obligations, sometimes more than once, and some may have service-connected disabilities. So where they enroll, the majority are going to public institutions. A smaller group, about 10.7%, come to the private nonprofits, and slightly less go to the for-profit proprietary schools. Our graduation rate from the Million Records Project, 51% completed a post-secondary degree or certificate despite the challenges they faced. The sample they looked at was from 2002 2010 of people who were using the Montgomery GI Bill and post-9/11 GI Bill. And our top 5 degrees: business, public service, health, science, and engineering. I get a lot of, I'm not sure if they included education under public service, I get a lot of teachers, and I get a lot of vets who come in too for humanities. So, my panel. I'm going to let them go from left to right and introduce themselves. Linda, I'll start with you.
My name is Linda Hinkle. I am kind of a product of 3 different campuses, all of which I am proud to talk about. I came from Hardin Valley, Pellissippi, to Maryville College. I got my associates at Pellissippi, came on to Maryville College to get my bachelor's, and I'm now at UT Knoxville, seeking my master's degree in the Master's Social Work program there. I have a family. I am married to a veteran. I am a veteran. We've got a lot of veterans in my family. And I am excited because at the end of all of this, in 2 years, when I grow up to get my real job, I want to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I want to do mental health counseling. I want to go from campus to campus and do what you guys are doing too. So I kind of want to grow up to be you guys. And I'm excited because my education has more than prepared me to do that. And if you're here from UT Knoxville, I've been accepted into the grad program. I've been a non-degree there now for a few months because apparently they think I need medical help for going into the program early. I've been told, why would you do that? Why don't you just wait till fall? I've got 9 credits under my belt now, and I've got 4 weeks left of class. So I've been told that I might want to keep quiet a little bit before I start yelling about veterans and want to help veterans on campus. If you're here from UT Knoxville, please find me. I want to help. That's what I want to do. So,
thank you. Adam?
My name is Adam Peppers. I did 8 years in the Army. Most of that time was in the reserves. While I was in, I did nuclear, biological, and chemical detection. And like Darren said, most veterans don't do what they did, or they change into something new. So now I'm doing finance and accounting and minoring in outdoor studies and tourism. So I can do math outside. I can do that. I got out 12 years ago. Didn't look at going to college initially. I wanted to work. I ended up starting a family, and with the recession in 2008 and a few more job changes, I ended up here. I had a friend that graduated from here, and he convinced me to come up here. And with the help of the post-9/11 GI Bill and the Yellow Ribbon Program, I'm now able to come here. I live on campus. I'm a resident. And it's truly loved my experience as being a veteran here at Maryville College.
Adam called me, I think, like at the end of July, before fall.
Oh, no. It was
August?
2 weeks before.
But hey, we got him here. So.
Found out 3 days before orientation that I was going to get to come up here.
That's right. He's a good student, great student. I'd like to, and Wendy, tell us a little bit about, tell us about your major too, don't forget that, and what brought you, why you first enrolled in college. Go ahead.
My name is Wendy Rose. I served a total of 8 years in the United States Marine Corps. I joined in 2001. I did my 5-year stint. I got out, I enrolled at Mississippi State. About 3 semesters into it, I got a FedEx letter saying, "You've been presidentially recalled." So I had to drop everything that I was doing, put my college on hold, put my life on hold, go back to active duty. I finished out my term. I totaled 2 tours in Iraq, nearly 2 years over there. I got back out the second time. I went ahead and finished my associate degree at Mississippi. And I started looking at different colleges. My first attempt at this was to go to Tennessee Tech. I wanted to pursue a very similar degree as what I did in the Marines. I did water purification. So I pursued an engineering-based. I found myself at Tennessee Tech. And if you're here from Tennessee Tech, y'all need some help. I love you guys, but the veterans, they didn't have anything at all established for veterans. And this is early in this ballgame. I'm talking like 2011, before these conferences. They might have made some changes. Good for you guys. It was just a huge miss on me. I mean, I found myself completely lost on campus, disconnected from other students, horribly, just a lot of issues when I was trying to attend there. So I was like, well, my family lives in the area up here. Maybe I should move closer to home. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I was like, well, this is a good idea. So I looked at Tennessee Tech, or UT and Maryville College. The very first person I met on this campus was Darren, and he was fantastic. I mean, kind of like what Mr. Crawford over here said. I mean, it was such a simple process. I make a contact, bam, I'm in. Everything's falling into place. Yes, your credits transfer. Yes, this. Wow, okay, cool. So I found myself in the biology field, which is still very closely related to water. I'm kind of one of those rare exceptions that do follow, I guess because it's such a technical field. I'm fixing to graduate. I've got 2 semesters left, and I'm loving Maryville College.
Thank you, Wendy. I think each of you jumped into my next question and answered it. Linda,
I did.
Linda, I was going to ask you, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your military experience before we go on.
Sure. I was United States Army. I was a combat medical specialist. I served for 5 years. I'm also a 100% disabled veteran, diagnosed with Crohn's disease shortly before I was ready to be done. I initially wanted to be a nurse, but due to the lack of my immune system to be able to fight off disease, I started looking into psychology. I went to Mississippi and fell in love with Berta Ward, who is a teacher there at the highest level. And I didn't want to do anything but psychology from that point forward. But I served. I also had the ability to be a military wife there for a while because my husband served past my time. And so I give honor to those people who are doing that because I know how hard that can be, especially when you have kids. So I kind of saw both sides of the fence. My father was a Vietnam veteran, so it's a sort of a combination of generations. You carry around the heart of people that you had before you, and I enjoyed my job more than I can really express. And the people that I met in the military and being able to help was a real honor. So,
thank you. This next question is about connecting with your peers on campus. I got this question from an incoming vet this fall. He just wanted to know, how do you go about connecting or assimilating this population, especially one that's mostly younger, okay? And you would think I would have a good answer for this. I mean, I went through this several years ago, and then I thought about it, and I thought, well, I didn't have a good answer then, and I hadn't really revisited it. I mean, I really just sort of tried to blend in for about a year. I didn't know any other veterans. It was 1990. I was on the campus of Tennessee Tech, and I was just a couple of years older, well, 3 years older than most of my classmates, but I felt very different from them. And so this to me is a question I wanted to explore with the panel. So for my panelists, and I'll start with you, Linda, how did you connect with other students when you first arrived on campus? I mean, what are the challenges, and do you have any strategies for that?
well, Vandy Kemp, whom I love dearly, will tell you that I'm one of those veterans who came to Maryville when she wasn't quite sure what to do with us. And I love her honesty about that. But I watched this program grow while I was here from nothing to something. And I will tell you the difference that, for me, I love being at Hardin Valley. But when you go from one campus to another, there's differences. They may be subtle. When I came to Maryville College, I was introduced to a group of people, faculty and staff, who loved veterans. And the people at Hardin Valley do too, please don't mistake me when I say that. But there was a soul and a personality and a connection there within the people on campus that you recognize immediately as a veteran as soon as you put your foot here. Same at Hardin Valley for me. And I was very fortunate to land here. And I also found that although I was in class with kids who could be my children, every single one of them, that that the people here on this campus and the students who go here, they want to know about veterans. They are sometimes afraid to approach you and ask. So I use the one tool I've got, my mouth. And so I talked to a lot of people about my military service, and I wasn't afraid to answer questions. And I think that connecting as a veteran kind of has to start with you. It starts with the soul of people around you in a lot of ways, but it has to start with you, and you have to be willing to talk about, maybe not about the parts of your service that you can't really talk about, but just talking about being a veteran, talking about what that means for you, trying to get people to understand. I know a lot of people will say that they don't want their veterans having to educate anybody, but I'm a big believer, and that's kind of where it has to start for you to be able to do that. And so fitting in on campus, it was pretty easy for me. I kind of had a lot of non-trad friends. The SBA was really just getting started when I came to Maryville College, so I connected with those folks. I was brought in with a group of Marines, Dave Johnson and Sean Hagstrom, and I was one female in amongst a whole lot of Marine guys, and God bless them, because I was a medic, they forgave me instantly that I was and I got, by the time I finished my career, or my time here at Maryville College, they were giving me what I think is the highest compliment you can give someone and be a Marine. Dave Johnson looked at me once and said, Linda, I know you were Army, and I know you loved your job, but you sure should have been in the Marine Corps. So, but the connections really have to start with the people here on campus, and they have to start with you as a veteran. And so I encourage you to talk about your military service, because let me tell you, there were professors here who were very open and said, we don't know anything. I don't have anybody who served in my family, not recently. I don't know anything about military service. Talk to me about it. Tell me about it. I want to be better capable and able and more educated to be able to help the veterans, in my classrooms. That makes all the difference. That's what helped me.
Yeah.
What was the question? I would get so lost in what Linda was saying.
I know.
No, I'm kidding. Connecting with people here on campus.
Yeah, I might add, you had the experience too. You came to campus and you moved into the dorms.
I did move into the dorms. So, my first year here, I had 3 19-year-old roommates, all young enough to be my own children. So it was definitely an interesting experience. I'm fortunate enough that one of those guys that I get along with just about anybody. Also, as Randy will attest to, very, very laid back and full of amazing self-control. I'll tell my story. So, I was hanging out outside the dorm one afternoon, and with a friend. We were just standing out there talking, and all of a sudden I hear this noise, this little tink-tink behind me. It kind of reminded me of being back over in Afghanistan for a second, and again, here comes this tink-tink sound, and come to find out that some of our younger students had brought an airsoft rifle to school and was shooting it out their window in my general direction. Well, my self-control allowed me to not put them in the hospital or the grave that day, as much as me and Dave Johnson wanted to. But in the end, I became friends with some of these guys, and it's all about experiences, and it's all about just making friends. You know, you got to talk to these Lincolns. You got to talk to these people. You can't be afraid to ask or answer the hard questions. I even when we did our suicide awareness campaign recently, I had a student come up to me and ask me, well, "What is it about veteran suicide?" And that's a hard question to answer. But you work through it. You talk to them about it. You realize that they're all really good people, and again, the faculty and staff here have been more than supportive and more than helpful in making the transition here a lot easier.
Wendy, I believe you are really our newest
Yes.
intern, but you came in, was it summer?
Yes.
Last summer?
Yeah, I've had 2 semesters here.
Yeah.
I kind of had a different take on things. I think because I was a sergeant and I was continually put in a lot of responsibility roles during my time in the Marines, I find myself kind of mothering with some of the younger students. I have a very, very heavy science load. I mean, I'm in the middle of my thesis. I've got organic chemistry and cellular biology and all these classes, and a 2-year-old at home. And I've got a lot of students that are like, how are you doing this? How in the world are you coping with this? And I find myself kind of just trying to help them through it and show them different study techniques, different ways. And that's kind of how I relate to some of the younger generation. And I know that's a little different take on it, but during those conversations, we do get into talking. Sometimes you got to get your mind off of the chemistry and take a second to get to know who you're talking to. And that's where we get to exchange some personal information and get to know one another. And over time, these relationships have developed into friendships.
Thank you. This next question is a tough one for me. And it came up, I think, in our last Green Zone training. And it's about acknowledging and recognizing student veterans. For many years, I didn't talk about the fact that I was a veteran. And the first time I heard thank you for your service, and that was just a couple of years ago at Pellissippi State, it really stunned me. I didn't know how to react to it. And so, I'm always careful about, with veterans, if I think they're a veteran or if they've mentioned it, I really don't want to be nosy, but I do want to acknowledge it if it's okay. And so that's my question to the panel is, how do you appropriately acknowledge or identify a student veteran on campus or in the classroom? Adam, I'm going to start with you on that one.
How do you identify someone? Well, you just kind of know. Whether you've met the person or not, you see a guy or a girl sitting across the classroom. Being a veteran, you can almost tell pretty quickly whether or not they are one. But as far as being identified in class as a veteran by the professor, Darren and I have talked about this. Some days I like it, and some days I don't. I can't figure out why it's one way or the other. Maybe just which side of the bed I woke up on that morning. But usually once you do identify with another veteran in class, it's almost that instant connection as well. You've got that background, you've got a family at home in most cases, and you're not one of these traditional college students. So, identifying each other in the classroom is usually pretty easy, but with the professors, I don't know. It's my best answer.
Wendy, you're smiling at me.
Yeah, I've got some good ones on this one. I've talked to some of the professors. I participated in the Green Zone training. Almost every veteran I've ever met there's a lot of us that have tattoos. That's one way you can tell. And almost all of them that do have tattoos are going to have some type of military tattoo, more than likely. Look for other key things. When you first get out of the military, you have a tendency to wear the boots. Why the boots, I don't know. They're awful. But they do wear the boots. The backpacks, rank insignia on a backpack or something. There's ways that teachers and fellow students can help identify those veterans. Sometimes I wear the veteran hats and little, just old t-shirts, from your days in, your unit t-shirts and stuff. So, I mean, it can be easier than you think, for a professor to identify a veteran student or someone in admissions to identify when they come in. It can be fairly easy, but Randy, you guys need to...
Is it okay to ask questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Please do.
Yes, my
And
apologies.
one of those people who's pretty oblivious to this stuff. Pat, is there an appropriate question that we can tell faculty to ask to get the information that's not offensive?
Sure. Well, I wrote 116 pages on Veterans Affairs and here on campus for my thesis. And I had the opportunity to talk to staff and faculty. I had an opportunity to look at regional and national and just within Tennessee type trends. I can tell you that I have experienced this conversation in so many ways it's not funny. Dr. Crystal Kohler, who's in the psychology department here, who I know will not kill me for calling on her. She's not here today, but she'll forgive me later. Told me, she was actually my thesis supervisor, and so when I was writing my thesis, she looked at me and she told me a little horror story of her own about this very subject. She said that when she had a veteran in her classroom for the very first time, that she knew for sure they were a veteran when they came and came. She said, I was so darn proud to have them there. I just wanted to, like, you know, and this is so-and-so, our student veteran in this class, you know, and she was just, she said, and then I now look and I go, I'm horrified because I now know I shouldn't have done that, and that's a microaggression, and some people don't want to necessarily be identified. I will tell you this. Professors, I have one suggestion for you. At some point in time, you're going to come for something in your classroom that veterans know more about than you could probably ever guess. You probably know the veterans who are coming into your classroom just simply because we use a language that we all understand. Just like Wendy was saying, sometimes if we can still fit in our unit shirts, I'm not one of those. I bought some new ones that say female veteran. You'll have those kind of clues. But it is perfectly appropriate if you think that person is a veteran to walk up to them and say, do you have military service? Do it in private. Do it in private first. Approach that student in private, email them, or have them come into your office and say, do you have military service? Because I've got a subject coming up in class that may be there. You know, I was shown a film when I was here by a professor in class about the terrible things that went on in Haiti. And I was there and he didn't know that. And it never came to his mind to say that this film might be hard for people to watch and give an alternative assignment. And so I talked to him about that after class because I'm big in the education of if other veterans come into this classroom, you should know about this. So when I spoke to him about it, he was thusly horrified and was like, I'm going to keep that in mind from this point forward. And so when subjects would come up in class from that point forward that he thought he would like to have a veteran point of view on, since I identified myself as a veteran, and veteran, that's one way. If you want people to know you're a veteran, just say it in class one time. Everyone will remember it. That has never failed for me. So as a professor, as administrator, if you have people that you want to get them speaking out, I would say talk to them privately and say, do you have military service? I have this feeling you do. And if you do, I have this, or this I'd like to put before you and get your point of view on it, whether it's private or whether it's in the classroom, because I just want to know more about you. And at that point, you've made a connection that won't break. And so that's my suggestion.
Thank you. Any questions? Anybody else? All right. This next question is about persistence skills, experience in the classroom. Sometimes veterans are coming, you come from a highly structured environment to a classroom, campus, which seems very decentralized. I've had veterans call it chaotic. And so I'm wondering, from kind of panelists, in what ways do your skills from the military experience help you? And in what ways do they work against you? I want you to start, Linda.
Okay. Skills that worked for me. Organization was a big one. I was a mom with 4 toddlers in the house. Actually newborn 2, 4, and 6 if you really want to get specific. And so when I graduated from high school and I went into the military, I didn't go into college right away because I had my first child. And so I was busy raising babies for a while. When my youngest son became old enough to make a good, decent peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I decided it was time for me to go back to college. And so I found that both skills the skill of being organized, the skill of, when I went to the military, I came from a tiny little small town in West Virginia. I was raised by my grandmother. I did something that a lot of my friends didn't do just by getting out of that state and branching out. And so when that happened, when I went into the military, my first experience on day one was to have a drill sergeant tell me how happy I must be to be from West Virginia and have shoes to wear for the first time. But in the military you learn, and I'd like to speak to you as a veteran, but not just as a veteran, but as a female, as a woman. When I was in the military, you learn a lot, not just by being a veteran along with your brothers and sisters who are as well, but you learn other things about women. And I would like to say that coming from that, I have become stronger in supporting other women, because I saw what the other women in my unit went through to be in the jobs they were in and the things that they do. And I honor the men who were in my unit just as much, because we were all chewing the same dirt. But organization, being able to motivate myself in the times where there was no one else around. Being willing to sleep in the mud and ask questions and not be afraid to ask the wrong ones. All those are great skills to bring into it. Things that will hurt you as a veteran. Your training in the military is very specific. They want you to use the least words you can use to say the most important things you have to say as fast as you can right then. If you're calling in a chopper to come pick up and evac a patient, they don't want your life story. They want short, simple, precise, period. They're there to save a life. They're there to get you in and out. You're there to follow orders. Sometimes coming into college, because you go from that environment that's very specific into an environment that isn't, and the students around you, you'll sometimes, as a veteran, you just get kind of aggravated with the other students because you don't understand why someone would put off a paper to the last minute. Those sorts of frustrations, I hear people laughing because I know you've been there. But you get those people who will wait till the last minute to do things, and it drives you crazy. And a lot of professors don't understand that, when you come into Maryville College, for example, they want you to be a prolific writer. That whole short, structured way of talking and thinking in the military that you learn, that becomes who you are, it can hurt you in an environment like that, or at least make you a little bit slower to kind of catch up and be able to spread your wings and go. And I think it's important for staff and faculty to understand that you're not going to automatically, especially if you're coming out of active duty and into school, which happens a lot now, you're not going to have that ability to have that space there. So, college language college writing is a second language that you have to learn. And so I would say that in a lot of ways, in many more ways, my time in service helped me. But in those ways, I had to learn to meander a little bit more about the subject and to do a deeper literature review and what that meant and that sort of thing. And so I would say that those were probably the things that probably hurt me the most. And I'll honestly say, too, that being a veteran, you kind of cloister together. Like Kathy C., who is my best friend and not a veteran, everyone assumes she is because we're inseparable. So she just takes it now and just goes, she's like, I'm not one, but I'm not going to say I'm not because people assume I am. She's like, I'm guilty by association. So, but you'll see us get together on campus, and I think that's wonderful because you need those connections, but I also think you also need to spread out a little bit and get with the civilian population on campus and start showing them that, you're not separate, you're ready to assimilate in a lot of ways too. So I'll hush.
No. Actually, we're starting to move into the break time, so I want to jump to our last question, okay? And this is a question I told you about. I said, this is the last one I'm going to ask. So if you had a piece of advice for faculty and staff, Adam, what would it be?
Just communication. If you do identify a veteran in the classroom, communicate with them. Let them know that, you're going to be there for them, that maybe you don't understand everything they've gone through, but that, you're willing to work with them with whatever issues. A lot of us have VA appointments that we have to go to and we miss class, or sometimes have issues dealing with some of the disabilities that we have. And so just work with us. Know that no matter what, even if we might be a little bit behind in something because of some of these things, we're still going to get the work done. We're still going to get everything done. You know, but just that open communication and being willing to listen to us and to work with us.
I think my biggest advice to the instructors falls more onto the disability side of things. A common misconception, I think due to media purposes, that a disabled veteran is not just people that have prosthetics or super PTSD. I mean, I know more people that have bad backs that are veterans than just about any other disability. I see a bunch of heads shaking, you know. That's a lot of weight we carry around. So sometimes, you know, automatically they hear disability and they're looking for a physical sign that you have a disability. That isn't always the case. Me personally, I've struggled more with a PTSD-related one. I'm in some chemistry classes, and I've been exposed to having to work with some phosphorus and stuff, and I had to step out of the classroom sometimes. So if you're a professor, you know, be aware that just because that veteran excuses themselves for a minute or has a VA appointment, has to take a phone call for an emergency because we got kids, they'll be back. They'll be back, they're still responsible, but they also have a lot of other responsibilities and issues in their life that also require and demand their attention. I'm not 18-year-old living on campus. I've got a lot of responsibilities. And the bad back things, the disability issues, once you schedule an appointment with the VA, sometimes that takes a long time to get that appointment. You can't just cancel it. So being flexible, if it falls the same day as exam, it's our responsibility as well to come and talk to the professor. It's not just the professor's responsibility. But if they come to you and say, hey, look, I've got this exam or this appointment coming up, it falls on exam day, can I take it early? Can I take it a day late? Can we work something out? The communication, huge, huge, huge.
Thank you. Thank you. Linda?
And I have to say that I'm going to kind of repeat the same things they just said. If you have a veteran in class who, and there will be veterans in your classroom, if you ask a question or cover a subject, who may say, you know, when I spent time in Afghanistan, or when I spent time in Iraq, or when I was stationed here in the United States, and if they say I'm a veteran, they're almost saying, hey, come talk to me. I'm okay with talking to you. Any veteran who's going to announce themselves in the classroom in front of X number of students is someone who's approachable. And they'll let you know where their limits are as far as talking with people and talk, and you might be really surprised about just how happy and thankful they'll be that you were willing to approach them. Because I think sometimes on the back of all of our veteran shirt it says, I'll bite you or something, because sometimes people are willing to approach you, but it's fewer and far in between than those who won't. And so I just want to encourage you to ask questions and educate yourselves. That's, you know, and there's no person in the world who will talk to you as much as a veteran will. I can tell you that for sure. So,
Thank you, Linda. Do I have any questions from the audience? Okay, right here.
I'd just like to make a comment. I'm in a class right now, I'm a veteran, and I'm taking the class right now at Cal City State. It's my first classroom in 40 years. So it's been exciting for me and everything. And I'd just like to comment on what we're talking about as far as the veterans may have, you know, sometimes they'll think about it if you're a professor and someone says, hey, I gotta go to this meeting or I gotta do this or that. On the first day of class, the professor made it very, very clear that he didn't like people getting up, walking in and out of the door. It disrupts the class. He made it very, very clear what he wants to do if you want to miss the class, or if you have to step out because of the big E word, emergency, or something like that. I thought that was extremely well done. He literally burned the entire first class, making these ground rules clear. The ground rules were clear for the 35 kids that were in the kid. Everybody's a kid to me. The ground rules were clear for these 35 kids that were in this class. I understand that veterans, for example, will go through a lot of post-traumatic stuff. They've seen some things that are awful. So has a 22-year-old or 21-year-old student who went through an extremely traumatic family experience or something like that when they were little. My point is that the post-traumatic stress syndrome is not just military. We can't just because you're a vet, I don't think that makes you special. It makes you a student, and we want to know what those students have gone through and that sort of thing. I think that's important for professors to understand. The smartest thing I think we can tell professors is, quite frankly, to do what this guy did the first day we had class. He made it very clear, and it was such an all-encompassing explanation. He covered just about anything that could happen to anybody, whether you were a veteran or female or male or whatever you were. And I thought it was outstanding, the way he did that. And yeah, we want to consider problems in this forum that veterans are facing and things like that. But you know what? There's people in this country who are never veterans that are facing problems that are just as severe as the ones that we're facing as well. So we're part of that entire group. We're not separate and special just because we wear that veteran tag. I think that'd be a good thing to tell the professors, to make sure that that is set clearly. Your rules are set clearly for everybody, and realize that these are specific to some veterans, and you may have veterans in your classroom. That's part of the puzzle.
It's a huge topic we discussed in Green Zone training this year, is that just because if there's an acknowledgement that happens, we're not expecting a special treatment. We don't want your special treatment. If anything, don't, you keep it, I earn it, you know.
I think you're absolutely right.
And just setting those ground rules, that's absolutely, that clears the slate for everybody. You're all on an equal playing field at that point.
Yeah, if you're not doing this Green Zone training, it has been tremendously helpful here in Maryville. We really do encourage it.
Well, and I will tell you that a lot of people who aren't veterans will look at you and tell you that they'll use words like hero and special, and that's wonderful. I think that acknowledgement and appreciation of veterans is a great thing, but I'll tell you what I think of when I walked into a school environment over at Pellissippi. Graduated in 1992 from high school, and I had to do college math again. You know what I thought? Dig in. Being a veteran inside my own head was, I'm going to have to work my butt off and prove that I belong here. Because I'm in an environment with kids who just got out of high school who do math that I don't even understand. It's like reading Greek. So that was for me. I was like, dig in and do this and do the best you can. And I put the most pressure on myself to do well. And so I think that's what you'll find inside every veteran's mind on campus. They're trying to figure out how to do it and how to do it well, because that's what we're trying to do. Do it well.
Darren, let's leave the rest of the questions until later.
Yes.
Let's take a 15-minute break.
Thank you very much.
15 minutes, we're back.